Greetings, friends! My name is, of course, Charles Q. Banks, and I'd like to welcome you to my movie review of Kong, Skull Island. A movie review suggested to me by one David Brown. Thank you, sir. A shout out to you. And this movie was directed by Jordan Vogt Roberts of 500 Days of Summer fame. And its long list of screenwriters, such as John Gattins, Dan Gilroy, Derek Connolly, and Max Bornstein, etc., all collectively have worked on movies like Power Rangers, the new one, of course, the new series of movies, that is, along with Need for Speed 2014, Flight, Real Steel, and Jurassic World, which is a very interesting mix, if you ask me. And that gives you a good feel for the type and quality of writing that this movie actually has. And not all of those movies are known for their story or their writing. So this movie, what I'm saying is, this movie does not have good writing. And in order to tell you exactly how I feel about this movie, and why I have a negative view of it, which I definitely do, I need to go back in time a bit and give you my personal history with Kong. I have always been a big fan of Kong, not not the biggest fan. I haven't seen all of the movies. I haven't seen Queen Kong. I know it exists, but I really don't want to see it. And I used to watch the original over and over with my family, and we have the original VHS, the 50-year anniversary edition, that you push the button on it and it roars. At least it used to. The battery is quite long dead. And when Peter Jackson's version, back in 2005, came out, I've got to say that when I went to that movie, that is the best movie-going experience I have had to date. It was just so much fun, so thrilling. I actually love the length of the movie. I know a lot of people dislike that movie for its length and its long-windedness, but I loved it. I really enjoyed it. I thought, this is the definitive Kong experience. So classic, so riveting, and it's just one of my favorite movies, actually. Peter Jackson's King Kong. And so when I heard that there was going to be another King Kong, I was pretty excited. I was like, okay, I can see that they could, make a good run of this. I want to see what happens. I want to see what new they can bring to the table of this Kong title. And so, but when I saw the trailer, I saw that it was set in the 70s for some reason. It was called Skull Island, which Peter Jackson's movie really focused on a whole lot, so that's not a new thing. And it features the talent of John Goodman and John C. Reilly. And when I saw that, I just was, face palmed, because I was like, you did it wrong. Oh, this is going to be horrible. And I'm very disappointed. This is one of those few moments where I was disappointed that I was exactly right. But, I didn't want to see this movie, but my dad wanted to go see it with me. It came out one day before my birthday, and even though I tried my best to keep it away, I went with my dad and we saw it. And I was just as disappointed with the movie as I was with the trailer. Not because of John C. Reilly or John Goodman. They both did wonderful acting jobs in this movie. Like I said, the writing has all the problems. It's everything to do with the writing. And even perhaps the directing. The cinematography is great. It's beautiful. Although, again, the CGI in this film is not the best. I have seen better, and even Peter Jackson still holds up to this movie. This movie has not really gone very much further in any respect, technically, from what Peter Jackson's Kong did back then, and so that's pretty disappointing as well. Overall, it's just a disappointing experience, but in order to tell you exactly why, I do need to go into some spoiler territory. So, if you do not mind, if you wish to see the movie yourself, I recommend you do not do so, because this is a really bad movie, and if you really want to know why I think it's a bad movie, then you'll have to listen through these spoilers. So, like I say, it's the writing. The acting is also seems to be very bad in this movie, but it's not because of the actors. It's not the actors' fault. It's again it's the part of the writing. When the writing and directing is bad, it reflects badly on the actors. Um, because there are just so many moments, just like in Godzilla, that I was thinking, man, that line made no sense. Why did he say that? What is going on here? Nobody's telling me. There is no explanation for Kong's origin story. There is no explanation for the backstories of any of the characters. And there is no character development for anyone except for John C. Reilly's character. So yeah, I told you back in the Godzilla 2014 review that I did, if you saw that I took over 4 pages of notes depicting how negative and how many plot points that were missing from that movie. This time I have 5 pages, and rather than just try and give you vague ideas of why this movie is bad, I am going to actually list some of them to you, and these are some spoilerific things, so once again, be warned. There are some good things about this movie. Don't get me wrong there. There are some parts of it that are actually enjoyable. But to me, they were few and far between, and the fact that there are more plot holes in this movie than there are holes in Swiss cheese really kept me from actually enjoying it. Not only that, there are some very strange writing choices in this movie that I just don't understand, and plot choices. It's a very confusing mess. So, the opening scene is great, okay? There's a World War II pilot who falls out of the sky, and he lands on a sandy beach just across from a Japanese enemy who landed on the beach with him. They shoot at each other, both missing terribly, which I don't know why that would happen to well-trained soldiers in World War II. But they both miss each other, and they engage in close-quarters combat and run into the forest to do so, to complete the job. And it's a great sparring scene, you know, it gets really riveting, and, you know, the katana is coming in on the American, and he grabs it with his hands and has to rip it out of the hands of the katana-wielding Japanese man. And they're fighting, and they're about to kill each other when Kong rises up from the cliff they were standing on and is towering over them, and their fight becomes irrelevant. And I was like, ooh, this is really fun, this is really cool. What an amazing idea of having it set in World War II and have it be about this American and this Japanese man. But no, it skips 20 years ahead to the 70s, and John Goodman and his assistant are trying to get government funding to go and see Skull Island and to try and chart it and do geological research on this Edenic paradise of an island out in the Pacific that no one has ever gone to because it's kind of like the Bermuda Triangle. People go there and never return. And again, I have no idea why it's like that, why no one has ever returned, because, well, you'll see later on that people did return, and it wasn't that difficult to get away. So if they were well equipped for going and coming, then there shouldn't be a problem with charting this island. Why hasn't anyone else charted this island before? There's no reason for it. There's a hurricane that's going perpetually around the island, but they make it through and come back, and it seems to stop and start. It's not perpetual like it seemed it was. There are times when the hurricane stops and starts and it isn't even there. And there's some red electric flashes that are kind of weird, kind of funny looking, really bad CGI. It's like, why is it red electricity? I don't understand this. But it was cool looking, okay? That's this movie to a T. It makes no sense. It looks ridiculous. There's no reason for it. But it's cool looking, okay? So they go to the island, but before that, they pick up John Goodman and his black assistant, and the assistant is actually a really, I hate to say it, a bad actor. It may just be the writing, but every scene that he's in, he overreacts to everything, and he acts like a cartoon character. Okay, and there's a lot of comedy in this movie as well. John Goodman trying to talk to the guy as if, him trying to find, secret Edenic prehistoric life on this island is actually, makes any sense. He thinks that aliens are really, stupid. You're stupid to believe in aliens, but to believe in prehistoric creatures still living on Earth, that's totally logical. So they try to pick up Tom Hiddleston because he is an ex-SAS kind of roguish hunter-tracker character, and they need a hunter-tracker. So they go to Thailand to pick him up. No reason is given as to why to pick him up rather than anyone else. But they go there, they go to Thailand to a bar, and while they're there, the black assistant is telling John Goodman, this is a bad idea, we don't even know this person. Why are we doing this? Tom Hiddleston's character is decommissioned SAS. Why is he spending time in this Thai watering hole? And and if you think about that, why is he arguing this now? They used to be in America, and they've spent time on a plane going there. They get there, they make it to almost to their destination, and now he's arguing about why they're doing this? They would have had this conversation before they left. But no, they're showing it to us while they're there, just for the convenience of the audience being able to hear why they're there and what they're doing. So that's terrible writing, but it's convenient, right? So they go in and they talk to Tom Hiddleston, but before they talk to him, they find him in kind of a pickle. He's playing pool, right? And this place is filled with prostitutes and drunken people and everything, and it's made out to be a horrible place. So it's like, why is this a good guy if he's spending all this time in this place? And he's supposed to be this roguish character, kind of a Han Solo, spending time in the canteen, but you don't get that vibe from Tom Hiddleston. His main acting role, which was very well cast, was Loki, a god in human form. And in this, he's like, this beautiful hunk of a man, quote unquote, and and he's supposed to be this roguish, scruffled, ex-British military man. And it doesn't make any sense. This casting for Tom Hiddleston is awful. So he's in this kerfuffle with a bunch of Thai mafia men who take him aside and are about to pull out their guns when he just totally takes them out with his pool cue and an 8-ball. Nothing but a pool cue and an 8-ball. He takes 3 guys out, maybe killing all of them, who knows. And nobody stops him, nobody reacts, nobody screams, nobody stops him, no bouncer bounces him out of the place. He just hits them all, knocks them over the head, throws this 8-ball right in this guy's face, and then calms down and goes to talk to John Goodman and his assistant about taking on a new job. And it's like, what? This isn't the Wild West, people. This is the same problem I had with Birdman when Michael Keaton, is yelling at a critic in a bar, and he takes his glass and throws it against the wall, cursing, yelling at this woman right up to her face, and nobody does anything. That doesn't happen in the real world. He just destroyed private property, and the barkeep does nothing. Nobody, people in the audience, bystanders, would come out and say, hey, stop it, man, calm down. But no, that doesn't happen because we need the reaction between these two characters to happen. So anyway, they talk to him, and they get him on, as a tracker. They don't tell him what he'll be tracking, but large animals, and that's kind of an understatement, but he goes anyway. And then there's also this other scene where Brie Larson is shown being recruited, and she's not even talked to by John Goodman or anyone. It's just, she picks up this phone. She's supposed to be, I guess, kind of clumsy. She picks up this phone, kind of drops it, and is carrying it around and all this, and she's a photographer, an anti-war photographer. That's all we get to know about her. We don't know anything about her past, about her likes or dislikes. It's just she's anti-war and a hippie and, hates the military and is an empowered woman, I guess. They're supposed to be, but there's not much shown about her. Um, and she's one of the main characters, one of the two main characters in this movie. You thought it was John Goodman, but no, it's not. You thought it was the American at the beginning, but it's not. It's Tom Hiddleston, who is an underdeveloped, poorly cast SAS member, and Brie Larson as a hippie without a personality, who is only ever complaining about the war. Vietnam War, that is. Because the Vietnam War has just passed by the time this movie is going on. So it's shown that she was phoned in, literally. Someone knew a person who knew a person and got her as a journalist to go on this expedition to Skull Island. And okay, she's on the expedition, but she's an anti-war photographer, and they have a military Vietnam escort going after with them. And I just don't understand why they would allow her to go, especially if John Goodman had secrets that he wanted to keep from the public. Because it is shown later on that John Goodman was keeping a lot from these people. But so, continuing on, they go towards the island. And one thing that I have to say about this movie is that it has so many meaningless 70s rock montages throughout its running time to remind you this is in the 70s, people. This is important that you know it's in the 70s. And it comes off as more of a gimmick than anything. They go to the island, and they're shown kind of interacting with Samuel L. Jackson's military envoy that is going with them. And it's a stupid kind of party scene where all the guys have their shirts off, and they're, I don't know, running around, hanging onto each other, and Brie Larson is just shown, snap, 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 snap. You know, it's like, with, you know, old-timey Creedence Clearwater music going on. And that's not so bad. It's like one time out of many, and it's like, would that really happen? I don't know. I wasn't in the military. But then they see the island, and it's beautiful, and so they're going into the island, and there's this meaningless scene where one of the scientists doesn't want to go because there's a hurricane system going around it, and he's like, there's nothing that'll make me go into that hurricane. And they decide to go into the hurricane anyway, and the guy is shown getting on the copter anyway. Why did he get on the copter? It doesn't show us why he got on the copter in the end. So that was pointless. Him resisting was a pointless scene. It didn't make any sense. It doesn't give anything to this movie. And there's so many scenes like that. So what else? So they're going in, and they're going into the hurricane, and Samuel L. Jackson is trying to calm everyone down because there's red lightning shooting down on all sides, and there's, you know, it's supposed to be a hurricane, but all it turns out to be is some light turbulence. Okay. So Samuel L. Jackson is saying over the loudspeakers, you know, remember the story of Icarus, because, you know, he gave wings to his son, but he flew too close to he flew into the sky, but flew too close to the sun, and his wax wings melted off and fell to his death. But we have Pennsylvania steel, which is guaranteed not to melt. And right after he tells that story, they go through the hurricane, and they see the beauty of Skull Island with a Nixon bobblehead in the foreground to let you know it's the 70s, everyone. And so there's this kind of beautiful scene, lasts for far too long. It's almost like 4 minutes of them just looking at these cliffs that they're going over, and there's a giant mountain in the middle of this island. But then they set the researchers down, and another 70s montage happens with more 70s rock music going on for no reason, and it just shows them, you know, setting up the seismic, you know, geothermal reaction stuff, and then they drop bombs in order to have a response come from underground to give the researchers some evaluation of the geoscientific layout of underground. of Under the Island, and they're doing this, and and then this montage immediately gets cut short by King Kong attacking the helicopters and just throws a palm tree right through the windshield of one of the helicopters. And everyone's kind of taken aback, and the music suddenly stops, and they look towards where the tree came from, and there is King Kong. It's almost exactly the same photo as in this poster that you're seeing on my right. And if he's that big, and he towers that far above all of the cliffs around him, then why didn't anyone see him throwing the tree in the first place? Like, they're in helicopters, for gosh sakes. They can see the entire horizon. He dominates it with his massive form. This is one of the few good things about this movie. Kong's design is really cool. He's over 100 feet tall, maybe 300 feet tall to compete with Godzilla's size. But there's no reason why they should have been unprepared for King Kong coming upon them. But he comes upon them, and just like in Godzilla 2014, the stupid helicopter pilot flies right into him. Literally, right into his arm. Like, why would you do that? It was hilarious. If not for all of the death and destruction that's going on. King Kong, in his horrible rage, destroys over 2/3 of the military convoy that's going with them, and destroys all of the helicopters. 13 helicopters he destroys with punches, with grabbing them, with trees, smacking them out of the sky, with, the helicopters themselves running right into him and exploding for some reason, which makes no sense in and of itself. Man. And that's just the first 25 minutes. Now, one thing that people dislike about this movie is showing King Kong within the first 25 minutes. I really disagree with that, because I want to see the Kong. I want to see the King Kong doing his thing as soon as possible. And people think that destroys the tension, to have King Kong not be this thing that's really built up, because they really built up King Kong in the original Peter Jackson film from 2005. So much so that they waited an hour to show him. But in this, it's the first 25 minutes, and that may be a turnoff for some, because there is really no build-up to King Kong. But I kind of liked it because we get to see more of King Kong throughout the running time of this movie than we saw Godzilla in Godzilla 2014. Nevertheless, the writing and the plot holes in this movie are far worse than Godzilla's, and that was really distracting in Godzilla, and it's even worse in this one because not only are there plot holes, but when they hit the island and, when things start to go awry, it just falls apart. When Tom Hiddleston and Brie Larson get off the helicopter, they come right off and immediately start spouting one-liners. There's no reaction, no, awe or wonder at King Kong, no fear or extreme human reaction like you would expect from seeing a giant monster that you never thought would exist destroy 2/3 of your military convoy and friends and family, whatever. And Samuel L. Jackson is the only one to react in a human way. He sees Kong killing his people, and he gets rage and revenge in his heart, and he wants to kill Kong no matter the cost. And he's completely justified in that. But then halfway through the movie, they make Samuel L. Jackson, this person who wants to protect his men, who wants to take revenge on King Kong for killing them, he's made out to be the villain. And I have no idea why they did this. He's made out to be the villain because he wants to kill the one who killed his friends. Why wouldn't he? If he has the ability to do so. And that's the thing. He's kind of shown as a very aggressive, very egotistical man, but he is totally just in his desires and his intentions, which are to protect the world from giant monsters. But then halfway through the movie, Kong, who John Goodman himself says kills innocent people off the coast of Skull Island, he reveals that he saw King Kong years ago when he was a child, and the entire boat and everyone aboard that he was on at the time was killed by King Kong. And so his point in making this research voyage was to kill Kong, because Kong is a threat to humanity. But Kong is made out to be the good guy. And it's completely wrong. It's completely wrong because humans care about humans, right? Humans care about humans, and it's even to such an extent that we have a problem with taking care of the planet. But we'll never stop caring about humans. And so when King Kong is killing humans to save the island, we're going to be on the side of the Marines getting killed, not on the side of Kong, because Kong has no character in this movie. In Peter Jackson's, he was protecting himself and the island because he was a wild animal. He had a little bit more intelligence than the average ape, but he was a wild animal that protected himself and that which he cared about. And so in that movie, when the military comes to kill him, he lashes out and kills many of the military because they're attacking him. He had a reason to do that, and you're kind of like, oh no, not Kong, he made a relationship with the girl. And that's the only reason Kong was any sort of a good guy in that movie. It doesn't make sense to make Kong good or bad, because he's an animal. And that's how it was in the original movie. This is what happens when you mess with nature. Animals are going to react, and the planet is going to react, and it's not going to be pretty. But those movies had a reason for their premise of this giant monster. This movie does not. All it's telling us is that Vietnam War was wrong. And war is wrong, and we need to take care of the planet. It's really heavy-handed, and this idea that Kong is king on this island, and humans are not the king, and they're so much more powerful than us, is bogus, because what has every monster movie told us in the past? That humanity is able to take out whatever threat comes before us. With bombs and rockets and atom bombs. Like, we'll never find a monster that's too big that we can't destroy it. Except unless it's like Galactus, but then we have the Avengers for that, right? And that's something else about this movie. It's a cash-in, okay? It's a tie-in movie with 2014's Godzilla. And it just seems like they took actors and writers and said, hey, that Godzilla movie did well. Let's make a tie-in series like Marvel's MCU, but this time, instead of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, we'll make it the Monster Cinematic Universe, and we'll have King Kong fight Godzilla in the near future, which they're going to make that movie as well. But we have to have a setup movie for Kong. So they just threw these actors and threw these writers at this movie to see if any of it would stick. And it doesn't. It really doesn't work. You don't care about any of the characters except for the ones that they kill right at the beginning. Chapman was my favorite character. He had so much empathy in his interactions. He gets separated from the group and is by himself and sees Kong, and he sees a lot of these creatures, but then is immediately destroyed like 3 scenes in of his. And you're like, okay, what was that? Why were we shown him? Why did we have to care about him at all? And it only serves to increase our empathy and sympathy for Samuel L. Jackson. It strengthens his resolve to kill Kong. And in the end, it is shown that Kong has been protecting this area of natives from the skull crawlers, who are literally evil antagonists. They're presented as evil antagonists even though they are animals, even though they're part of this ecosystem, and they're supposed to be telling us that humans are bad for the ecosystem, and yet these monsters, these skull crawlers, which are part of the ecosystem, are somehow evil. It makes no sense whatsoever. So you're supposed to be rooting for King Kong because now it's shown that he's good to these natives, but if he's good to these natives, why is he just killing off all of these humans recklessly? Just because they bombed his place? Then Okay, I can see that, I guess. But why doesn't he continue killing them when he sees Tom Hiddleston and Brie Larson's character? They had to shoehorn in some sort of relationship of the girl, the blonde girl, with King Kong, and it's really shoehorned in. There is no reason for Kong to not kill her. But anyway, there's this big scene where they go up. She goes right up to King Kong and touches his nose, and she is in ecstasies, you know, while King Kong is just looking at them, and there's no emotion on his face. He's just this big giant CGI monster, and Tom Hiddleston doesn't have any reaction whatsoever to Kong being there, even though he's seen Kong killing all of his men. And he just stands there and is like, wow, how beautiful. What a beautiful specimen. He doesn't say that, but that's how he's acting. And it's like, why would you have that response? The real response would be, holy moly, get out of here. You'd have some sort of fear. But there's none of that in this movie. So, that's kind of a synopsis of my problems with this movie. Oh, also, the origin story of Kong is not told at all, but the story of the natives is told by John C. Reilly's character, who is the American from the beginning. He has lived through from World War II to today on the island with these natives, and the natives don't speak a word. They're communists, basically. They're socialists who live together, and they do not speak. They do not have any form of sign language or anything, and yet they have this perfect, idyllic community in which there is no war or fighting. They're all past that, says John C. Reilly. And how do you get past that if you cannot speak or communicate to each other? So he goes and he tells them the story of the people, that one day they were, like they always do, hiding out from all of the monsters on this island, when one day some of the monsters started fighting against the other monsters and protecting them from the things that were killing them. And it's like, do you even know why? Why are you telling me this if you're not going to tell me how or why any of this happened? But then he says, some good things don't last forever, I guess. And then it shows a mural of multiple Kongs. There's skeletons lying there, and one Kong looking on. He doesn't give any other explanation for that. If there were multiple Kongs, how did they die? Why is there not... It's implied that King Kong is the last of his race. But if he's so powerful that he's able to take out these skull crawlers, then there's no reason why any of the other Kongs should have died before him, if they were just as powerful as he is. But no, Kong is king on this island. And there's this big, setup of the fight between the skull crawlers and Kong. And, like, he's the good guy, and the skull crawlers are the bad guy, and the skull crawlers have a giant one that comes up every so often from under the ground. And he just looks like the same skull crawlers as all the rest. He's just kind of bigger, But no, he's mean. He's evil, But even their clash is not very exciting, because we've seen the same action scenes of Kong fighting dinosaurs done elsewhere and done better. And that's probably my main point, is that this movie is made irrelevant by Peter Jackson's King Kong even existing. The T-Rex fight between Kong and two T-Rexes was far more interesting, far more action-packed than any of the Kong scenes in this movie. There was kind of a unique moment where Kong drags this massive giant octopus out of the river, this shallow river. So why was the octopus there? Anyway, so he pulls this octopus out of the river, and the octopus starts writhing and, wrapping around his head and wrapping around his legs, and he just stomps on the thing and eats it, like calamari, and he pulls it along, and it's like, whoa. That was pretty cool. That's the only interesting Kong scene in this movie. Oh, he also does make a lot of use of weapons, which is kind of new. I mean, he did do that in Peter Jackson's movie too. Um, but it's really ridiculous. There's no reason for any of this conflict to be happening. Um, I don't know. It doesn't make any sense. What the main characters should have done is made it to the north of the island as fast as they could. But instead they go to save Kong because of that emotional moment, that, you know, the nose touching scene. But why could they save Kong from Samuel L. Jackson if Samuel L. Jackson dunking him in a flaming river with napalm could not kill him? There's no reason for them to be able to help King Kong. He lives through the napalm, kills the Skullcrawler, and in the end he didn't even need anyone to help him. Except for this one moment where the Skullcrawler knocks him into a Navy ship that's been there for years, and the Navy ship somehow, its giant chains wrap themselves around his neck and his arms, immediately binding him so the Skullcrawler is able to almost kill him, but then, you know, the humans are able to shoot at it, and oh, it's like, how did that happen? It makes no sense. How did King Kong get bound up? You know, who tied him up? Like, what invisible ghost tied up King Kong like this just so that the humans could help him? That was the stupidest thing I've seen in cinema for a long time. And that's the problem with this movie. It has so much, such a big budget, but it's making these mistakes that me and my friends wouldn't have made as 8-year-olds creating monster movies. So, yeah, it really fights with itself, this movie, and the writing conflicts in so many ways, and I think that's probably because there are so many writers involved. Like, there didn't seem to be one clear vision. But I know that many people actually do like this movie. It got it usually gets 6.2, between 6.2 and 7s, which I really don't think that it deserves. This is probably one of the worst Kong movies ever made. Definitely one of the worst monster movies ever made. If you want to know what this movie is really like, think of Jurassic Park: The Lost World, take out all of the interesting characters, and set it in the 70s, and yeah, that you're set. There's tons of death porn in this that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. It doesn't make you feel good, definitely not. Samuel L. Jackson gets killed off really anticlimactically. Every side character that you actually cared about gets killed. John Goodman gets killed halfway through, even though he seemed to be one of the main characters. I have so many problems with this movie, and I'm going to give it a 4 out of 10, because at least with Godzilla 2014, which I gave a 6, at least with that movie, it had a focused narrative. It focused on the Ford family. Or the Brody family, excuse me. It focused on Ford and the Brody family going through these ridiculous moments with Godzilla to see Godzilla fight with Mutos. And that's what we got, and that was fine. But with this, there are way too many characters for any of them to be fleshed out enough, and not enough for this to be even close to making an average score. So, those are my thoughts on King Kong, and if you like this movie, I don't judge you. I like bad movies too, like the 1998 Godzilla movie. I gave that a 7 because I really thought it had a lot of enjoyment potential, but I know it has problems. I know it has really bad acting and writing, just like this movie does, but I know that it's a bad movie. I just like it, okay? And I also have guilty pleasures, like Ghost Rider. That's a really bad movie as well, but it's really enjoyable to me, just because of my priorities. And if you like this movie, that's because you have a priority on action. There's lots of action, lots of death, lots of destruction. This is a very grisly movie. It really pushed the boundaries of the PG-13 rating. It almost should have an R, because the F word is used almost twice. If not for, King Kong just killing off Samuel L. Jackson's character before he could finish the word. Thank you, King Kong, for keeping this PG-13. And there's really grisly deaths. As another critic said, this is the most unapproachable and gruesome King Kong that has ever been made. There are some really shocking death moments, and some really shockingly weird, like, first-person shooter game moments, where they have the camera in front of a gun, and you're looking down the sights while they're firing it. And I'm like, oh, that's this kind of like a video game. How fun. You know, if this were a video game, this would be kind of fun, wouldn't it? You know, killing giant creatures in the forest, in the jungle. Well, guess what? They also already did that too with King Kong in 2005 for the PS2. But that was really distracting. It was a cool effect for a video game, but it was really distracting for the movie. And this is one of those movies where the more I think about it, the more I find wrong with it. That is something really bad for a movie. But so, getting back to my point, if you like this movie, I don't cast any flack at you at all, but just know that it is bad. You can accept that it's bad and still like it. Don't try to tell me, though, that this movie deserves a 7. Anything above a 6 is going too far. So yeah, thanks for watching. Thank you, David Brown, once more for the suggestion. I hope you don't get too mad at me, Internet, because I really didn't like this movie. So, thanks again, God bless, and I will see you in the next one.